So moving on and following Anastasia, we have Stefan Nolte here, who's a manager and a shareholder at Shonda Consult and a chief advisor at Spock Consultants on the theme. He's going to be talking to us about going public through a SPAC merger.
Hi.
Yes. Hi. We're happy to have you. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and I will be happy to provide some insights regarding getting merged with the SPAC. I'm well. I'm working hard. It's my second international conference where I'm a speaker today. Funny, I had one in the early morning at 7 o'clock my time.
Oh, you've accomplished a lot by 7 a.m. Kudos to you. Thank you so much for being with us. And please take the stage. We're really excited about your presentation.
Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Stefan Nolte. I'm from Hamburg in Germany originally, but I left Germany for good in 1984 and live in the Eastern Mediterranean area in the Middle East since then. We are advising on SPACs since 3.5 years. We are setting up SPACs, and we are assisting private companies that want to get merged with a SPAC. So, yeah, I will speak about going public through a SPAC merger, focusing on analyzing expectations and goals, getting ready for the pitch, finding the right SPAC, and negotiating the merger agreement. The good news is for everybody that it is seller's time, as Anastasia mentioned already right now. There's a huge number of SPACs currently looking for acquisition targets. There are more than 530, exactly 536 SPACs in the US looking for acquisition target companies. Anastasia mentioned the ones which explicitly mention in their prospectus that they are looking in the healthcare area or industry. But in addition to those, there's a big number of SPACs with a very general acquisition strategy defined in the prospectus. And those may also acquire a company in the health sector. So the potential is more than just the SPACs which already mentioned that they will invest in the healthcare industry. There's a total of 516 billion in trust currently of those SPACs. In Europe, we have 23 SPACs currently looking for an acquisition target. However, I would like at this point to make a little note on European SPACs. You can list SPACs in Europe, but European markets liquidity is a fraction of the liquidity in the US. And this will play a role when shareholders may in future want to sell their shares. If it's more than just a few shares, but a big bunch of shares, you might not find enough buyers to sell the shares that you want to sell if a SPAC is listed on the European stock exchanges. So right now, we do not set up SPACs in Europe. We can do, technically and practically, we can do it. But unless there are at least 5-6 de-SPACings, acquisitions realized by European SPACs, we are very cautious because we want to see how the market behaves during the acquisition and merger period and after the merger. So this is something to be kept in mind. SPACs, I'm talking mainly about US SPACs or only about US SPACs. They're not only looking for targets in the US, but they're looking for targets anywhere in the world. A good year ago, US SPACs started to look into Europe for possible acquisition target companies, and now they look in all the world, from Europe to Asia, South America, Africa, and so on. About 50% of the IPOs in 2020 were, of all IPOs in 2020, were SPAC IPOs. So you see SPAC IPOs are taking, or already took a very prominent position in the IPO market. And SPACs are definitely here to stay, despite all the adverse media reaction sometimes when somebody is coughing at the SEC. The media is writing, oh, the end of the SPACs. This is indeed not the case. One thing you should keep in mind is SPACs that you approached for a possible acquisition and merger are not only talking with you. So there is a competition of private companies approaching SPACs, and also SPACs are approaching private companies to find a good acquisition target. So you are in a competitive environment where you have to prove yourself against others, which you don't know. And therefore, it is only more important to be very well prepared in all aspects. And that's what we are focusing on here now. Getting merged with a SPAC or getting acquired with a SPAC is a matter of size. SPACs typically acquire a company of a valuation of 3 to 5 times of the IPO proceeds they have on trust account, which means that the SPAC with 100 million IPO will typically acquire a company of 300, 500 million valuation. Some of you may say now or may think that, yes, but in the past we saw that pre-market startups have been acquired. It's true. SPACs should acquire a business. SPACs should acquire a company with an ongoing business and not a pre-market startup. And the acquisition of pre-market startups in the near past were one of the reasons why the SEC intervened end of March this year and created some trouble in the SPAC space, because they did not see the valuation of pre-market startups justified. There was, just to take one case, there's this case of this e-truck company, Nikola, which is a well pre-market startup, and they were valuated by the SPAC at 1.1 billion, and they are so far from any market entry. So this was crazy, and the SEC didn't like it. And the end today is that 13, 14 SPACs or ex-SPACs are under investigation of the SEC, and 4 or 5 of them are under the investigation of the US Department for Justice, mainly for the accusation of misrepresentation. And this is something nobody wants to step into. So smaller companies have difficulties to get acquired by a SPAC because they are simply too small. So many semi-mature startups which are in the market, they may not have enough valuation yet, and they may therefore not be interesting to be acquired by a SPAC. Maybe as a second company or secondary acquisition together with a bigger target, and then the two are combined because they would create synergies. But this is not so often the case. SPACs are issuing, when SPACs acquire a company 3-5 times of the value of the money they have on trust account, the question is, how do they do it? How can I buy a company of 300 million if I have 100 million on my account? So SPACs acquire new shares, new listed shares, and then they do a share swap with the shareholders of the company to be acquired, and thus the shareholders of the company to be acquired become typically, but not necessarily, main shareholders of the merged company, which is then a public company. And it's important to stress that SPACs do not do hostile takeovers, because the selling shareholders are mostly always the majority shareholders of the new merged company. Questions, there's a number of questions that you need to be clear on prior to approaching anybody, any SPAC. So you need to sit down with your fellow shareholders, or by yourself if you're the only shareholders, and you need to be very clear about a number of questions, because this will be tested during any pitch rounds you may have with SPACs. So one question is, why do I want to go public? the real fair market value of your company should be clear. And I would suggest at this point, do or order somebody to do evaluation of your company, so you have a fresh valuation at hand, which would prove or justify your expectations. The board members that you meet of SPACs, one of the first questions will be regarding evaluation, and if you tell them just a figure and cannot justify this, you have a weak argument. Doing a fair market valuation with a company that is experienced in this and which is also experienced in doing valuations in the SPAC space, which I would recommend you to do, they will be happy to serve, and it doesn't cost a fortune. Depending on with whom you work, it's something around $25,000 to $50,000. If you go to Goldman and Sachs and ask them to do evaluation, they will charge you $300,000 to $500,000. You should be clear at what size of SPAC you want to look at. This is in relation with the financial mechanics during the acquisition and the merger. This is in relation to the size of your company, the valuation of your company. And so if your company has a valuation of 300, 400, let's say, million US dollars, then you would typically look or contact SPACs with an IPO of in the range of 100 million, 125 million, maybe 150 million. Then, I don't know if you know, but a part of the IPO proceeds sitting on trust account can be used as a payout to the selling shareholders, the shareholders of the company to be acquired. But typically the main portion, if possible, of the funds on the trust account will become available as working capital for the company after the merger. So you should have an answer ready if the SPAC board members will ask you, how do you think to use the money you get from this funding after the merger? So you should have a clear plan for this, and you should know where you want to use this money, and you should also know where it will take the company, the usefulness of these funds. What you should also be clear on is what compensation are you expecting? So the compensation is, as I mentioned, shares of the SPAC that you would receive through a share swap. But you might also want to have a portion of cash. Maybe you dreamed about a new villa, or I don't know what. So you want 5 million or 10 million payout, but the rest you are okay with a share swap. You should have a clear answer to that. There are examples of all extremes. Recently, there was, right now, there's an acquisition undergoing of this company Swivel, which is focusing on e-vehicles for public transport in African countries. Swivel's headquarters are in Dubai. The company has been acquired, or is in the process of being acquired. They have agreed on $1.45 billion, and the shareholders of Swivel, they did not want any payout because they have their income, and they prefer to have all the money on the IPO, from the IPO proceeds on the trust account, to be provided to the merged company, so they have more working capital for faster development of the business. When you merge with the company, there will be other shareholders together with you, and there will be other board members together with you. And anything is possible, anything can be negotiated, especially regarding the board. Typically, some of the board members of the SPAC remain on the board, typically the CEO and sometimes CFO. And of course, almost all SPACs, they want the old board or the board of the company which was acquired to remain on the board, because they are the guys who have the expertise, who have the experience. Without them, the SPAC board members wouldn't be able to run the company. So you should have ideas about what you see there, which scenario, and maybe some of your board members are not willing to stay on the board, either because I don't want to work with that guy, or I don't want to be on the board of a public company, etc. So these are questions that need to be answered. And then you should know where you are heading to or where you want to head to. So SPAC board members, when talking with them for an acquisition, regarding a merger, they will ask you this question where you see your company in 2 or 3 years' time, provided your company got acquired and went public and got funded with, I don't know, 100 million or 70 million. So where do you see yourself? They want to have a clear answer to that. And if they don't see that you have a vision, they will not be so interested as if you would have a good vision. Yeah, you have to be prepared. You should have a very good teaser deck. Then you should have a very good pitch deck, which a teaser deck is actually a small version of the pitch deck. You must have a professional business plan, and you must have a resilient financial outlook. This is very important. If you have not prepared these plans, you will not lose necessarily the entire interest of the SPAC, but they see that you are not so much ready to go public, and you are not so much ready to enter acquisition negotiations. And this will also bring you to put you into a weak position because you are not clear about your figures. So you will be relying on what they find out or what they calculate what will be your figures, and this might be not for your advantage. You should, of course, have up-to-date certificates, articles of incorporation, KYC, due diligence, all this stuff. This goes without saying in the world today. And you have to have organizational charts, corporate structure. If you are holding patents and licenses, IP rights, etc., they add value to your company, and they might be a good ground for further exploitation in future, which would be for the benefit of the merged company. So it's good to have those at hand and to be prepared to talk about this. Your audit, your accounts, your bookkeeping should preferably be audited, and it should preferably be prepared as per the IFRS or the GAAP, which is the American standard. If you are in a country where you do not apply IFRS or GAAP probably not because it's only applied in the US, but IFRS is widely used in the world. But if you don't have that, you might consider of redoing your or having your bookkeeping redone as per the IFRS rules by your bookkeepers and auditors, and this would better prepare you for the main pitch and would provide you with a stronger position. Fair market valuation, I mentioned this already on my previous slide. You should have a fair market valuation ready and should be a fresh one. Don't forget that especially companies which are semi-mature startups or startups on the mature stage, their value may rise very quickly. And you got a new big customer, so all of a sudden you have a 25% more value. So therefore your valuation should really be updated. And you should have the vitas of the management of your company, because all or most or some of your board members will be sitting on the board of the merged company. So of course the SPAC board members, they want to know who are these guys, what is their capacity, what is their experience, etc. And then you should be clear of what you are looking for. Merging with a SPAC is like a marriage, and divorce is not easy. So you should really be a match. You should have a similar frequency with the guys of the SPAC board, or with those at least who will remain in the board. You should have a shared vision, and you should have a more or less mutual expectation. And you must be clear of what you will be providing, and of what the others could provide. So one thing, private companies that want to get public, will go public through a SPAC merger. One thing they are looking at often, and they should look at it, is what does the SPAC board or do the SPAC board members provide in addition to the funds, and in addition to the fact that you are going public. So a very good CEO who is well connected in the industry could be a great door opener for your businesses, for the further development of your business. And they might be able to reach out to companies and circles and environments where you wouldn't be able to reach out to. So such aspects may play a role, and they would be good for the business of the merged company. You should also look at the intention, try to find out, it's not always 100% possible, you should try to find out the intention of the existing shareholders of the SPAC, whether they are long-term shareholders or whether they are shareholders who want to cash out as quickly as possible. If they want to cash out as quickly as possible, and this may be the case for IPO investors who are shareholders of the company, then this might create some disturbances in the market and might drop the share price, for example. So it's not one of the most important points, but it's good to know. When you are negotiating a deal, the most important thing I recommend everybody is to hire a good M&A sell-side advisor who preferably has experience with SPAC mergers. You know what you want, but mergers and acquisitions are complicated matters. And if it's a merger with a SPAC, it's even more complicated because there are more and different dynamics in it. And you will not know all of this, of course. And so you should hire a very good sell-side M&A advisor. And we do assist our clients in bring them in contact with such advisors. You have to understand the clauses of the SPAC merger agreement. It's very important. It's a lot of legal stuff. It's all based on American, in case of American SPACs, it's all based on American legislation. So there's a lot of things that you will need to get explained by somebody, and this is what the advisor will do. One thing you should also pay attention to during the negotiations is that your company will get the funding, the working capital or operation capital after the merger that you desire and that you calculated to be necessary for certain steps of developments that you have in mind. And you should not be weak in that. You should be strong and demanding that. We have seen SPAC merger agreements where the size of the funds provided as financing to the merged company coming from the IPO proceeds on trust account have been put into the merger agreement as a condition. So saying, we agree in merging under the condition that the merged company gets funded with $80 million or $180 million or whatever. So, and then if there's not enough cash for that, in addition to also the cash out you may want, then the SPAC would need to find a pipe investor. This is a private investor in public equity who would provide additional cash, which can then be used to fulfill those conditions. Yeah, make sure that you are really communicating well with all SPAC board members, at least with those who will remain in the board after the merger, because these are the guys with whom you will sit at one table and manage the company later. So your process of getting acquainted, of developing friendship, professional friendship should start during the negotiation process. And if you see problems there, that might be a hint that you might have problems later. So keep all your sensors open and sensitive level to feel things between the lines as well. That's from my side. Thank you very much. If you are excited and curious, you are free to contact us, get more information on our website, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have later during the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefan. We really appreciate your talk and just giving us this pretty much a roadmap to the whole process, and it was very insightful.